we're going to talk about sourcing, and this is AI assisted procurement strategies using the scale framework. And from last week, we talked about the scale framework, which is state the problem, consolidate the data that we're going to be looking for, those issues, and make sure that all that is in a nice framework that allows us to assess the problem no matter what platform we're using. So by having this scale framework that we've put together, what we're going to be doing is being able to take it every time and apply it to different business use cases as we go through the different platforms. And every platform is going to be different. Every business use case is going to be different. You can combine the cases or combine the platforms to get the result you're looking for, which is always good to be able to combine those. And we'll talk about it a little bit later. We want to get some of this basic stuff down, and then we'll talk about how to combine them and make them all work seamlessly that way, as well as at the office hours, which you have on Friday. That's another time to come together and ask questions about what's going on with the different platforms and how to use them. And the other reason we're teaching a framework and not a specific platform, because the platforms are evolving so quickly that something I would teach you this week on a specific platform, next week there would be something better that could meet that need, meet that requirement. So we're just going to teach frameworks, and then you can apply those frameworks to any specific situation that you have coming together. Okay. Let me go ahead and come here. Is that this? All right, very good. So again, first part, we're going to analyze the parts of the framework is analyze potential sources for products and services, evaluate competitive offerings to determine the best product or service, determine procurement methods based on cost, timing, contracts, and competitive bidding, and apply driven decision-making tools using the scale framework. Now, this was specifically out of task 1-A, sourcing in the CPSM curriculum. So as you're going through this, hopefully you're doing a 1-2 punch as we're going through this, as you're learning the stuff for the CPSM. So at the end of this, you are more than ready to go take the CPSM certification exams. At the same time, this again giving you framework for how to apply this information. Okay, so just if you don't mind, just type in the chat box. There is, how familiar are you with AI assisted procurement? 1, very familiar, use it regularly, somewhat familiar, but need more knowledge. 2, I've heard of it, but never used it. 4, completely new to this concept. Okay, 2, definitely, for a lot of people they're just kind of familiar, either a 2 or a 3. And those that are experts, they're the ones that are, investing time like I am to try and figure out what these platforms are doing and how they can help us get through this. I was at a conference yesterday and talking to them about their supply chain teams. And I was asking them, these were pretty high level companies. And they were like, do you use AI? It's like, no, we're not quite sure what it is yet. And then I gave them, the example we used last week where we talked about compliance, and where within a few minutes, we did a compliance assessment on an RFP in, would have taken you hours or days, depending upon your workload, to get through that particular task. So that's how AI can be helpful for people. It allows you to get things done faster. And, particularly today, we'll be talking about the different concepts: supplier sourcing and evaluation, competitive offer analysis, RFQ methods, or procurement methods. Which one is the best one for the particular requirement you're going after, and then cost benefit analysis and a risk assessment of the requirement. And then we're going to, at the end, do a use case of applying the things that we're going to be talking about today. So why AI in procurement? What are some of the challenges you face in supplier selection or competitive bidding? Right. So if you think about when you're doing supplier selection, what are some of the challenges you have when you're picking which supplier you're going to use over the others? Is it not enough information? They're not responsive to your needs. They're not able to meet your timelines. They're not meeting your criteria. What are some of the challenges that you have when you go through supplier selection or the competitive bidding process? What are some of the things? You can either unmute or type an answer in the chat box. So what I remember when I was going through the process, some of the challenges we would face is, we had incumbents who had been there a while. So not only was it a cost of acquisition, but it was all cost of transition, right? Acquisition versus transition. Because once we acquire that item, we're going to have to transition to a new supplier, even though it may be a better price. What's going to be the bigger picture there? Good answer. Lowest bid may not be the best bidder. Hard to decipher that sometimes from the submitted bids. And how can we determine what those things are? What is a best value, right? Not necessarily the lowest price, but the actual best value at the end of the day. How do we work through that? And so when we do a supplier sourcing evaluation, that lack of time, really, that's another thing. Lack of time to vet them. And when we talk about automation and start putting together these systems using Make.com or Zapier or other platforms, that time you use to vet them, you will be able to automate to where at the end of the day, you can just come up with a score and say, okay, these are the best ones. And it's like, how do we do that? We'll show you how to do that in a later class or possibly in the office hours, right? So supplier sourcing and evaluation, process of identifying and assessing potential suppliers. We're going to look at their reliability, on-time delivery, quality assurance, cost structures and pricing models, their geographic location, their certification and compliance, other issues like the vetting processes, references, historical performance. Here, the relationship management, building those relationships with them, and then using AI to help in that supplier discovery and predictive analytics. So what I did is I put together some basic prompts here you see on the slide, but then I went back and built out our prompt structure, prompt, refine, deepen, and gist as a way to demonstrate the different prompts doing this. So you're doing a sourcing selection. So here we're looking for different sources for a particular thing. So here we got this right here, and we'll go use Perplexity. And why are we using Perplexity is that it has the most up-to-date internet ability to research. Now, I did some research and I understand some people are looking for some concert speakers is out there. And, what can we do to find what suppliers are out there to help provide us with those concert speakers or concert sound system that's going out there? And we can use Perplexity to do this. At the same time, I'm going to run this through ChatGPT because I want to compare the answers. And I would recommend you do the same thing. Always, as you're starting to figure out which platforms to use, always start with one and compare it to the others. And as you see which one gives you the better answer, you can rely on that one for your answer. So we go through here, and this is giving us a list of potential suppliers for concert speakers or a sound system. TI Audio, I can't pronounce that. I don't want to. High Power Audio, Samway Audio Equipment, Sky Zone, Misco, additional considerations. These are all different ones that are out there. Now, something we may consider, right? We want this to be American built. So we may say, can you find suppliers that are US based, right? So now it's going out and it's finding suppliers that are US based, right? And if we're looking to source for a government agency, that would be something that we would particularly want to be focused on, is making sure that we are compliant with our sourcing methods. Let's see what ChatGPT came up with. They came up with the different ones, JPL, and I'm just looking at different answers. I'm thinking I like this one better because it gives me more details. So I'll put that one in there. So again, what we're doing here is we're identifying sources for a particular item. Now, the next step in our prompt process is to evaluate the suppliers based on certification. So we don't have the data. They haven't submitted the RFP, so we're just doing market research. So we're asking the AI to help us do this. So here we're going to ask it to go ahead and ensure the supplier evaluations include certifications, regulatory compliance, and long-term viability. Long-term viability meaning their long-term viability in the marketplace itself. Okay, so it's giving us the certifications that we should be looking for, which we might include in our RFP. Must meet these standards, must have these certifications, FCC certification, UL certification, marking, long-term viability, operational resilience, technology adaptability, sustainability, risk factors, build quality maintenance. These are all good pieces here, good pieces of information, again, that you can use when you're building out your evaluation. Now that's the same question here. Let's see what ChatGPT, how it's going to give us a different answer. Come up this way. Okay. So this is giving me, I think, a little bit better answer than what Perplexity was giving. Give me a more generic answer. This one's giving me an actual answer based on the suppliers that I was looking at. This is a good answer. Okay, so going back up here, gives us JBL, QSC, Bose, Electro Voice, and Meyer Sound. And then here it goes and gives us justification for which one. JBL, competitive pricing, industry leader, has its certifications, regulatory compliance, long-term viability backed by a long-term. Why is this important? We don't want to buy a speaker and then not have it supportable for the long term. What are the risk factors we have to worry about? Market saturation. It goes through this process with the other vendors as well. Okay. Next, we want to go a little bit deeper. What are some of the historic trends? Now, I'm liking what ChatGPT is giving us, so I'm going to continue to use this one. It's still working. It's still working through the other stuff. Wow. Definitely getting in there. And this is ChatGPT 4. This isn't the latest and greatest. This is the older version. And it's even given us a chart here. Now, we've been working on this, maybe 5 minutes, and we're getting down to the details of this, giving us some pretty solid reasons for picking something here. So now we're just going to take it a little bit deeper. We have Perplexity do the same thing. Let it run. And what I'm finding the difference between the two is Perplexity is giving us a more generic, bigger answer, not a vendor-specific answer, where here this is giving us a very specific vendor-specific answer, including our vendors in the answer itself. So technological advancements, JBL, QSC, very good. Supply chain reliability. Okay, everyone had a pandemic shortage. JBL and QSC experienced component shortages leading to production delays. Meyer Sound had better supplier continuity due to localized high-end manufacturing, but faced raw material price increases. So that could be a risk factor that you might be considering. Is it important that I have continuity, or is price going to be an issue, right? Market demand and brand positioning, economic impacts and sourcing, trade and tariffs, which is very big in the conversation today in the current administration, putting on a lot of tariffs on different pieces here. So a lot of things manufactured in China, we would be concerned about that. Emerging markets. So when we do our SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats being external, this is where we would be looking, what are some external factors that could be affecting our decisions when we're picking a particular supplier. Geo-conflicts, shipping port congestions, definitely. AI-driven market disruptions, voice recognition, immersive audio systems. This is where people are going to use headphones and visual reality. So are they going to be using bigger speakers? So if we were thinking about buying a concert system for a concert in a park and investing hundreds of thousands of dollars, how long is that going to be viable, considering the development of technology when it comes to virtual reality and immersive sound, where you can have headphones and goggles that'll put you in a virtual reality that people will bring or may prefer to a concert experience. So where we would choose to spend our money. That's why this information might be helpful. All right. And then our last piece is to put it all together. Summarize supplier rankings. Now we're going to it. Again, this is not talking specifically about the vendor, but our question was about the vendor, right? Okay. Now, if I was committed to Perplexity and absolutely had to use Perplexity, how could I tune this up and say, yeah, great work. They always love to be complimented. Can you give me specific information? Here we go. information about the vendors listed above. Now it's going to go and actually look at the systems above and give us more specific information. So Electro Voice is one that's in this one here as well. Okay, but they have different vendors, and we're getting okay. So the reason I did that is the ChatGPT, the AI was not giving us the information we wanted the way we wanted it. So we had to go back and tune it up, meaning give it more specific direction so we can get the information that we want. Now, this last prompt being the gist, just give me the gist of what we just talked about, right? That's why we had gist. Go through there. And this is this is going to be the summary. This is going to be the one thing that you would probably copy, paste, put into a report and hand to somebody to help make that decision, right? So we've had a long discussion up to this point, and now we're just going to put it all together, pluses and minuses. It'll give you a great starting point, right? And the next step would be what? To go to market, right? That would be the next step. Go to market, define and get an RFP, get a quote from these folks. But this is where the system, the AI has assisted us in finding out this information in a matter of minutes. Now, when I was running a shop and I would have folks do this stuff, or even when I would do it on my own, how many hours would this take me to go through to do market research to be able to source an item, to know which vendors to approve or to invite to an RFP and RFQ, which we can go through that process, right? We've done this, again, in a matter of maybe almost 15 minutes at this point, right? We'll go over here, and I'm bouncing between two systems just to have a better idea of what's going on out there. Okay. And this is giving us a different recommendation. Not a problem. It's just giving us a different recommendation because they're thinking different, which highlights the independence of the different platforms. Does this make sense how you can use and the reason of this prompting process, not just to get one prompt, but to get all the prompts and just keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper to get the best answer the system can give you. Always making sure that you integrate and your human judgment into what you see is going on, right? Don't just accept it as reality. It's assisted. It's AI integration, AI assistance, not AI replacement, right? Does that make sense? So that's just, in the sourcing, supplier, and evaluation, going through that process. Now, the next would be to do competitive offering. This is where they would submit their bids and we would go through a process of analyzing the different bids. And I apologize, I wasn't able to find a data set of multiple bids for a specific requirement. I'm going to have to go back into the archives to find some stuff that I can use to demonstrate this. But what it would do is come in and would look at all the different bids the suppliers would provide at. Now, the question, which do you prioritize most in supplier selection? I know from before the previous answer was lowest bid. But when you're thinking about different supplier selections, which would be the most important factor? And let's just use the concert speaker system as that example at this point. Is cost going to be the main driver? Quality and service going to be more important? Lead time, depending upon the need for that requirement, or risk compliance? Each one of these would drive a different scenario in an RFP, an RFQ, an RFI, RFP, or a bid. It would all depend upon what you were trying to do, right? So if we were getting all this information about the speaker system, and now it's like, okay, how are we going to go to market? What are we going to do? This particular piece. We'll look at the evaluation criteria, delivery time, logistics, contract flexibility, and warranty terms. We would look at these when we do a weighted scorecard, assigning the importance to the price, reliability, and quality. All this would come together as we start to analyze the offers that were being presented, right? Benchmarking against comparative offers and using AI to automate ranking systems. Now, this is where we get more into integrating systems because we can reach out to APIs, reach out to Amazon platforms, other supplier platforms to get information, reach out directly to the vendors themselves to get information. But we're not to that point yet. So here we're going to do competitive offering. So with that, we'll go to our great consolidated prompts here, and we're going to compare multiple supplier bids based on the quality approach. Now we're going to continue with our process here. Compare multiple bids for our concert speaker system. Now, what the main piece I asked was provide a structured decision-making analysis, right? So what is coming up with is how we would analyze this particular bid, what we would do. And it's saying cost is 40% of the conversation, quality is 35%, and delivery time is 25%. This may or may not be true, depending upon our requirements. And as the humans, we need to interact with that and say, hey, this is most important over that. And then here we come through, and this will give you an idea. For those comparison for suppliers based on received bids. Now, where did they get this information? I have no idea. But let's just assume that they were doing it, and this gives us a very good analysis to make a decision. Right? Quality is 9, delivery week 10, 6 weeks. Quality 8, delivery 8 weeks. Quality 7, delivery 5 weeks. Even though you get it sooner, it's not going to be a higher quality. Is that worth the decision? We'll come through it here. Weighted scoring approach. Each factor is scored on a scale of 1 to 10, with higher values indicating better performance. Goes through this process. JBL seems to be coming out. Wait, we got a little bit of one here. Okay. Now let's see here. They're not as expensive. Their quality's there. So again, as a human, what do we recommend? And this is giving us decision. Now, imagine you had multiple bids for multiple vendors. Not 4, but let's say 20. And they were all in the same RFP format. You could drop them into this and say, I need a decision, right? But you would tell it what to do. You would give it this process as an example. Okay. So it ranks them out. And here it says the best choice, JBL, eco-friendly, EV voice, electro voice, high-end performance, Meyer sound. Now it's asking me for a cost breakdown, customized recommendation based on specific venue needs. If I had that information, we could definitely break into that. So let's go ahead and continue to build down our prompts that we built for this particular one. Okay. They validate bid data with industry benchmarks and adjusting weightings based on strategic procurement goals. Right. Just digging in more and more. Schedule needs. Okay. Now, most likely what happened is the system found a bid out there somewhere, and it's using that to build out our scenario here. Even though we didn't feed its information, it's giving us plenty of information to work through. Okay. And again, it's giving us a recommendation. Here are our sources. It's going through and it's telling us, it's giving us more and more information. Alibaba. Okay. So if you wanted to validate where it was getting its information and figuring out why it was doing this, you could find out that information right there. All right. Now let's go a little bit deeper. How negotiable they are. It says supplier negotiation flexibility, long-term cost efficiency, and potential supply chain risk affecting bid outcomes. Very interesting. Okay. I like it. There's some very good JBL. And so how could we use this from a government procurement perspective, right? If we have to go out to market and make a decision, if we were on a crunch, an urgent need, not that stereo speakers are ever going to be an urgent need issue, but they could be, right? Now you could actually go through and have solid justification for why you would go directly to JBL versus another vendor. If quality, best value was your biggest one. If cost was another one, then you'd pick a different vendor, right? You go through that process. Now, this is also showing you And another reason, as supply chain professionals, we need to be engaged in this. Notice what it says here: final recommendation based on negotiation, cost, efficiency, and risk. Okay. Systems negotiating with each other, right? Does this make sense right here? To where, think of all the human elements involved in procurement, where a human must be involved to make a decision. And negotiation is one of those pillars we like to stand up and say, yes, humans must negotiate better than systems all day long, because we can see the other side. We can negotiate. We know how to talk and play poker and all those other things to do that. But what if the systems and other companies, even the companies themselves, are saying, we're going to let the systems do this? As they lean down the number of people, how can they be more efficient in these processes? And negotiations is one of those areas where we think as humans we're able to do this, but the system might be able to do it better. All right. So just something to think about. Here, final recommendation, JBL's coming out on top again. Working through that. All right. Recommended supplier, an alternative for long-term efficiency. And if you're on a budget, Electro Voice. And here, all the justification is there for you. Last piece, let's get the gist of it. Put it all together. Come here. Okay. So now it's going through, and it's everything we just talked about up to this point is bringing it all together. Bringing it all together. And we've had this in the same thread because we're talking about the same item. So it's able to build off previous information is found, and we built, and just like we're having a conversation with somebody across from the table, we're going through this entire process. Okay. This is giving you some great next steps. Secure some volume discounts, favorable payment terms, lead time guarantees to avoid event delays, diversity backup suppliers. Maybe if you have some socioeconomic goals you have to achieve, and one of the suppliers from a veteran-owned, woman-owned, minority-owned type business is coming to the table, you're looking for a JBL solution. Maybe they've already got that solution, right? And this also gives us a sanity check when we're negotiating with vendors. If they're coming in with pricing that's way above 85,000, we kind of say, well, why is it so much better? We know based on our market research that 85,000 is a better price, right? We can go through that. Okay. Is this making sense? Again, we've been working in our training today up to 30 minutes, started on time. So we were definitely moving through this. And already we found market sources. We did price analysis. We've got it down to a solid decision that seems pretty justified. And it's just been one person in a matter of 30 minutes. In the old days, this would take hours, right? Because you have to go to each website, find the information, download it, synthesize it, analyze it, consolidate it, organize it in a report that makes sense to other people, and put it all together. And now in a matter of minutes versus hours, we're getting the same work done, right? This is pretty cool. This is where I get excited. And we're just halfway through. We're not even there yet. All right. Procurement methods, right? Now we've talked with which method should we use? Should we use an RFQ? Used for price comparisons when we know it's a well-defined product and service. If it's absolutely the same thing, easily compared, an RFQ is very good. RFI, if it's something we're trying to figure out, what can the suppliers do, get more market research, we would use an RFI. An RFP, this would be where we would want them to submit to us their proposal, and then we would go through the analysis that we just went through over here to come up with a decision. And an invitation for bid, where we know specifically that there's certain vendors, certain qualifications they have to have, so we want to invite them to bid to participate. In this particular case, we may say they must have specific certifications. If we were doing a socioeconomic set-aside, so it must be a woman-owned business that must participate in this, this would be an invitation to bid, where we would go out now with this information and say, what are the JBL vendors in the area? How many are woman-owned, to see if we have enough woman-owned vendors to participate in a set-aside, at least 3, right? More than one, but at least 3 or 4, so we have competition to have that set aside, right? So those are the 4 different methods that we could use. And so a prompt we could use is which one? Determine the best procurement method for this. Now we'll go back to our consolidated prompt list here. All right. Now let's determine this. We're going to keep on this same process here. You're like, Randy, we already figured it out. We don't need this anymore. Like, I'm showing you the process. Concert speakers. Okay. So if you were, being that we have to justify our decisions to a board, a commission, to hire, this would be a reason to say we're going to do it one way or another, right? Okay, so this is giving us a clear method for what we're going to use here. Okay, saying an RFP is recommended makes sense. Some of us are based on a dollar amount. We have to do an RFP, right? If it's over 50,000, 25,000, we have to do an RFP. But this is telling us why we want to do that. Okay, but we want to be certain, right? To develop a clear RFP document, define technical specifications, evaluation criteria, identify your suppliers. Now, some of these there may be resellers of these that are out there, right? Especially if we're in the state of California, we have to use California vendors. This may be where we have to use resellers type thing. Negotiate based on total cost of ownership. One of the main concepts we teach in the CPSM is total cost of ownership and knowing everything it takes to run this. So this is good. Okay. But let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's make sure this makes sense. Now, notice I've totally disregarded perplexity at this point. I'm like, okay, perplexity was good, but it was getting a little bit too clunky, and ChatGPT is giving me the answers that seem to meet my needs. Right. Now we're going through this process. Okay, good. Another method or reason you could use this system to lay this out is if you have new people joining your organization and you want to teach them things, but you don't have the bandwidth for training, right? And you bring them into, our training, of course, we'd love to have them into the training, of course, but look at how this is breaking it down and giving people reasons to learn why one method is better than another, right? Again, the best method is RFP. All right. Draft an RFP document, get a short flyer list, conclusion. Now it's asking me to do this, but we're not quite done yet. I'm tempted to let it do it. Let's go a little bit deeper. All right. Evaluate procurement strategies, including hybrid approaches, contract incentives, and supplier partnerships. Okay, so now it's starting to see what else, what are some other ways we can get best value? What's a hybrid procurement approach? RFP, RFQ. RFQ shortlist suppliers and do an RFP to those shortlist suppliers to do a negotiated custom solution. I like that, right? You go an RFQ, take the top 3, say, okay, based on these top 3, I want you to give me an RFP to break down your quote. It could work. Definitely could work. Contract incentives, volume discounts, early payment incentives, performance-based incentives, especially if they're doing installation and maintenance, right? That would be something to put in here, right? Potential drawbacks, supplier partnership, long-term strategic alliance. If you're putting in the system to maintain over 10 years, how can you negotiate a 10-year contract that includes not only initial system, but maintenance, replacement parts that over the long term are going to be a better value? Hybrid with contract incentives, speeds up, issue an RFQ. Top 2 suppliers move on to RFP negotiations. That's where you're going to negotiate, implement your volume discounts, multi-year preferred supplier agreement. And especially an outdoor speaker system, parts are going to wear out. So definitely want to put that in there. Still wants me to do this. Hold on a second. I'm going to get it. Hold on. Let's put this. And I'm very curious what kind of RFP is going to give us. All right. After the end of this, I'm going to say, write me a template. Let's see what it comes up with. Okay. Rolling it all out. All right, good. I like it. Does all make sense? All right. Yes, I want assistance. Yes, give me a draft RFQ RFP template for search speakers. All right, let's see what it gets. I have no idea what it's going to do. And I know some companies have systems that they have to use, so then it would have to be compliant with that system. But this is kind of giving you an idea how to roll it out and fill that in. Now, the beauty of this is because a lot of software systems are starting to integrate AI, that would be a question to start asking your current system. You know, when are you guys implementing our AI into the system, and how can we use it right now? Right. Okay, here we go. Technical specs, warranty, delivery logistics. So now it's giving you RFP, phase 2. So this is the phase 1, RFQ. Now we're going to phase 2. Laying all this stuff out. Evaluation criteria, terms and conditions. Now, what I would do with this, let's pull up my Claude. Because Claude is known as the better writer of the different platforms that are out there right now. So I would take this template, all right, and I would say, based on this template, provide me a complete RFP. All right, okay, based on the following, give me a complete RFP that I can use to go to market. So, all right, let's see what it does. So now it's generating this, right? So now it's going through and it's creating this. Now you have your own particular templates. I'm certain of it, right? And because you have your own templates, you could drop in your template and say, take this and make me an RFP just like this one, right? And it would go through and it would build it out just the way you want it because you gave it an example of what to do, right? So that's what you want to do. All your appendices, and you can continue to have it write it all out. So here again, now we started this at 20 after, now it's 20 minutes. Within 20 minutes, we built out, I would say, a usable RFP. I know it's not compliant because we weren't putting those instructions in there. However, if we wanted to add compliance into it, we could definitely start to add those instructions by using the compliance manuals and regulations, dropping those in there and saying, give me more compliance in accordance with this regulation, right? And that would go through that. So, is this something you guys think is valuable and helpful for your organization? And able to, be able to save time. And, as I was talking with folks yesterday, it was at the Kennedy Space Center. They were doing a small business prime contractor, and I was going around talking to all the prime contractors. And one of the things I kept saying, procurement's one of the most overtasked, underappreciated sections, but most important section of any company and organization, right? And so that's where you start to look at these things, and now you're able to do things that used to take hours, now takes minutes. You can just do more strategic analysis, right? With this done in a day, now you can actually go and say, okay, how can I impact my economy, my local economy, by being a socioeconomic set aside? Now you can get more strategic in it, right? So it's a little bit more interesting. Now we do a cost benefit analysis and a risk assessment. Weighs total procurement costs against benefits gained, ensures procurement efficiency and cost savings. Risk assessment, what are the supply chain risks, and uses AI for predictive analytics and mitigation strategies. Now, what do I mean by predictive analytics and mitigation strategies? If you had data from the last 5 years for a concert speaker system, in other words, this is a system that's been purchased for the last 20 years, every 5 years has been a new system. you could come in, you could take all that data, stick it in there, and say, okay, based on the last 20 years of history, what is the maintenance requirement for this speaker system? How often did we have to replace speakers? How much was that cost? Was it on-time delivery? How responsive was customer service? Did they meet our needs? Did we ever miss an event because the system was down, right? That's where you could pull all that stuff in there and develop mitigation strategies to help do that, right? So, here, additional hidden cost considerations, risk mitigation strategies, and now we're going to pull in another prompt here. Go to our consolidated list. Let's continue on our thread here. Conduct a cost-benefit analysis. Conduct a cost-benefit and risk analysis for sourcing our concert speakers. Sourcing concert speakers. Identify key financial, operational risk, propose strategies for mitigation based on AI-driven insights. Mitigation based, right? That's going to be the gold of this conversation once we're done with it. What do we got to do to reduce our risk? Make it less. Make it less, right? Okay. Benefits, bandwidth, long-term savings, cost, initial investment, right? Key financials, budget overruns, operational risks, risk mitigation strategies, comprehensive supplier evaluation, right? Make sure the suppliers are good to go. Contracts, penalties. I love penalties. For non-compliance or delays, right? Lack of payment. You don't do what you said you're going to do. We're going to get you. All right. Multiple suppliers, reduce dependency on a single source. That's always good. We call that competition. Regular training. So that may be something to consider putting in the contract, right? That annually they have to provide training, or whenever there's new equipment, they must provide training for the new equipment. Implement stringent checks upon equipment receipt during usage. All right. Good to go. Let's dig in a little bit more. All right. Ensure indirect cost, logistics, tariffs, and compliance fees are included. Adjust for potential currency fluctuation and inflation risks. Especially in this current time, this would be something to definitely consider. All right. Now I'm going to ask you the question when it's done here. And what I'm going to test for is currency, meaning current with the current times, because the tariffs are an issue, right? So I'm going to ask it, have you considered the latest issues with tariffs that have occurred in the last 30 days? Just see if it's even thinking that way, right? Okay. Well, wait a second. Hold on a second. We may have already incorporated this. All right. Giving some good information here. Logistics disruptions, multiple freight options, negotiate terms, right? FOB, CIF terms. That's our logistics terms, which they talk about a little bit in exam 1, but we definitely talk about in exam 2 when we talk about logistics. We go through each of the terms for those things. Strategic cost adjustments, adjust the cost model accounting for indirect inflation risks. This could be a great tool for negotiations when they start talking about annual increases, right? Like, well, if we're going to do a 10-year contract, we have to automatically include a 3% annual increase. Well, is that enough, right? That'd be a question I would ask. Continue to use predictive cost analysis, dynamic supplier contracts with inflation adjustments, definitely. Blockchain, smart contracts with tariff compliance. Now, blockchain's a whole nother conversation, right? What blockchain is everyone knows about blockchain due to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the one that everyone hears about blockchain. But blockchain has a much deeper meaning in the supply chain because it's a ledger that cannot be changed. So once an entry is made, it cannot be backed out or deleted. It has to be, it's just a chain of compliance. And we can do a conversation on blockchain at a different time. That's something to consider there. Okay, final recommendation. Total adjusted cost. So from 85,000 to 100,000, this will be important for budgeting, right? If they came to you and said, how much do I need for this? You have a realistic number. Now, we need to test this. We need to go deeper into the reasoning, but it gives us an idea of what's going on here, right? Go here. Now let's analyze past procurement failures, market volatility, competitor strategies to uncover hidden risks and cost savings opportunities. Let's dig a little deeper. Now it's going in a little bit deeper and going through it. All right, some common cause of procurement failures, mitigation strategies, supplier evaluation. We've hit that a couple times. Thorough needs assessment, very important point. What kind of speakers do we really need? Why am I going to buy a Ferrari when a Volkswagen will do? That was something I would definitely ask that question. Price and stability, something to consider. Natural disasters. I know in California we had fires, earthquakes. On the East Coast we've got our hurricanes. In the Midwest we've got tornadoes. Things that based on delivery, would those be an issue? Diverse supplier base, predictive analytics. Again, AI-driven tools for forecasting issues, market trends, and more flexible contracts. Pretty good stuff. Competitive bidding, of course, strategic partnerships. Now, considering you're one part of California, are there other entities, municipalities that also need speakers that you could talk to have a group deal, right? Get better volume pricing across the board for everybody. Okay. Benchmarking, build those supplier relationships, and auctions are always a good one. Auctions are always a good one. Okay. Let's put it all together. Wait, yeah. Before I do that, I'm going to ask this thing. Are you considering the latest tariff issues created by the U.S. government in the last 30 days? And it's probably going, what you talking about? Okay. Yes, I've considered the recent tariff developments in the past 30 days to implement additional tariff on China. All right, well, that's good. Okay, so it considered it. Very good. Now let's wrap it all up. I like how it does that table. This makes it so easy to read. So easy to read. Now, I remember, if I had to do this on my own, I would have to go out, find all this information, manually put it into a spreadsheet, somehow have the knowledge to take a spreadsheet and turn it into a table like this to make it all pretty and presentable and make it easy to present to somebody to get an approval for a decision, right? Data-driven recommendation, that's strong, very, very strong. Balanced performance. Our mitigation plan. Definitely, if you had to present this to a commission or to a board, they say, what are the risks and concerns in all this? We would lay this stuff out here. Final decision, proceed with JBL Professional. I like it. Okay. Randy, where is this fact checking? Where is the fact checking in this process? Great question. So how I would do this, right? This is giving me a great outline and giving me some ideas, right? So what I would do, for example, with this is I would take this information, and this is where the human element is going to come in. I'm going to go to the JBL website itself and start the process. I'm going to call them and say, I'm looking for this particular system. I'm going to have them send me information about this so I can know that it's good and it makes sense, right? So there's a lot of pro audio be here. Okay. And then the other thing I could do, if I want to be, a little bit lazy, like, okay, this is all great. Provide me the resources, cite the resources. There's a cite the sources where you got your information so I can validate them. Okay. So now I'm asking it to give me information, right? So now it's giving me the link. You can do this right here. Okay, good. Good. Now validate JBL pricing. Where did that come from? Okay, here, right here, click this. It's going through and it's putting its stuff together somewhere in this thing. I don't know what I'm looking at to know if it's right or not. It probably went in and said, hey, give me a list of everything here. But if you had a list of components, right, and you had specifications, then you could drop those in there and it'll tell you exactly where it got the information. Because notice, when we were looking at some of the things up here, it was going to eBay, Amazon. It was actually pulling in those systems to pull that information in. So, and here's more sources here. JBL Pro Audio, speakers, okay, Amazon. So here you can see that. So which is great. I'm so glad you asked that question. Thank you. It's like we always say, it's like you have to have the human element. What would make sense? How do I know the system is telling the truth? Ask it. Say, where are you getting this information? Explain to me the justification for your recommendation. How did you come to this recommendation? And the system will go in and it will tell you why it made those decisions and how it made those decisions, which is really, really cool. Now I'm asking for references, and here you can see over here that, hey, it's actually gone out to the market and found places where the pricing was. Now, again, I don't know if this is right or not because I don't know the specifications of a concert speaker system. You know, if you're talking about concert speaker in Key West, Florida, you're talking 2 speakers and a guitar player from a street vendor versus a speaker system in a huge park in Red Canyon in Colorado or wherever they do that. You know, it's a much better system that makes it work. But having those specifications would come in there, and ideally in procurement, we're not going to come up with this stuff, right? We have to source it. We don't have to develop it. But let's just say a county commissioner said, I want a new speaker system, supply chain, procurement, take care of it. Good to go. This gives you a starting point to say, here's all my results. Does this make sense? I don't know. Call an audio engineer, send it to them. They would then take it, they would check it, send you back a response to saying, yeah, it makes sense, but I would do this, this, and this. Then you go back into the system and you rework it a little bit better. Still, in less than an hour, we've gone through and we've got a pretty good idea, almost too good to be true to say, is this really true? Right? That's why we're asking the question and working through it to go through these things. So does that make sense? It's there. We just have to find it. And we want to get in the habit of asking that question. Validate yourself, right? Validate what you're telling me. Prove to me, show me your sources. And we always get in that habit to where we know that when it gives us an answer, we respond and it tells us and it says, okay, this is where I found it. We can go there and find it and validate it. And when I first started this, I would write some papers and I'd say, I need you to cite the sources before I publish this. And it would pull down these sources and I would go to validate the URL and would go to cyberspace nowhere. It's like, this article doesn't exist. It never did. You're going to get me in trouble. I can't go tell people about this. Right. So that's something to do. That's right. So again, procurement decision-making, automated supplier analysis, smart bid evaluation, contract optimization, risk assessment. We've kind of gone through all these different steps here. And now we're going to walk through the scale framework as a use case to put this together. And we're going to look at is lithium-ion batteries for EV production, challenges, cost volatility, supplier reliability, and geopolitical risks, and what AI provides real-time analysis of cost trends, supplier performance, and potential risks. Now, here's a link. You can go and find Tesla's vertical strategy in regards to batteries. Check that out. Pretty cool. And it'll give you some idea of what the electric EV battery supply chain is all about. And here, first, state the problem. Right? Identify sources, needs, procurement challenges, product specifications, supplier availability, cost, risks, factors. Now, going over here, what I did is in each step of the scale framework, I built out the prompt to make sure that we stated the problem correctly, right? That's what we're doing here. So here we go here. And I'm digging ChatGPT right now. We're doing a different product, so I'm going to start a new chat. I'm gonna start a new chat over here too, and I'm gonna pull in Gemini and Claude, not so much. Okay, let's get her started. So here, it's like analyze market trends for lithium battery suppliers, assess cost fluctuation, potential risk based on recent industry reports. Let's see what Perplexity comes up with. At the same time, we're going to have ChatGPT do some work. Just because I'm in a good mood, I'm going to have Gemini do some work. Now, the way I'm imagining this right now is I now have a team of 4 people to help me with my work, right? So this one's not giving me anything already. Boom. Give me a little bit more. All right. Here we go. Okay. Boom. Based on this. All right, very good. Let's see what the next one does. Now, I did this earlier. A little bit better. And now remember, this is going to be in the portal that you guys can download and play with this stuff. All right. All right. So it's giving me a little bit more. Now notice this is it's a good answer, but it's not really what I'm looking for, right? It's like, what is the problem here? Give me a nice, what I would call textbook answer. Here you can see the sources, asking about the sources. Where is this coming from? The risks. Like, okay, now it's giving me a little bit more. Lithium priceability, cobalt, nickel, processing bottlenecks. That would be important to know. Now, if you have to purchase batteries for an EV fleet, I know the state of California, a lot of municipalities were being mandated to have EV fleets, and batteries would be a high cost item, right? Just going through here, action plan for cost projection accuracy, scenario planning, supply chain monitoring, competitive intelligence, risk mitigation strategies. Let's assess regulatory trends. All right. I'm going to come to complexity here in a second. While that's working. Cost fluctuation, supply demand drags. Now with make.com, we can take the answer from Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini, have them consolidated into one and summarized to have the most robust answer in the world based on what's available out there. Okay. Regulatory trends, enhanced due diligence and transparency. Okay. Incentives for domestic production, that's coming, right? Environmental impact of mining, ethical sourcing challenges, technological advancements, material. Okay, cool. Now, the one question we have here, let's have a problem statement. Again, the reason I'm showing you this is to use the scale framework. Do I have the best problem statement? Right? If I'm going to present this to hire, have I thought through the problem enough to have a solid statement of what the problem is? Now, when I did my doctorate work and when you've done master's work and others, you're doing a thesis, the hardest part is to come up with your research question, making sure that it's specific enough that you can answer the question within the limitations of the paper or the time that you have. If it's too broad, there's too much to look at. So you want to make sure you have a solid statement problem here. So lithium battery supply chain faces significant disruptions due to regulatory changes, sustainability concerns, and technological advances. Stricter sourcing regulations, environmental pressures, and evolving battery technologies are reshaping cost structures and supplier dependencies. Companies that fail to adapt to these shifts risk supply chain instability, increased cost, and compliance challenges. And then it goes through and it gives us evidence to why. Next steps. Perfect. So we've gone through and we've got a problem statement. All right. Collect data elements. Where do we find the data? So here we go to our thing, compile, structured data set. And it's going to put together all the lithium battery suppliers out there, pricing, reliability ratings, geopolitical risk factors, right? Now, notice that when we start asking that question about where is this information coming from, it's starting to include the sources, which is pretty cool. And so these are all the suppliers that are out there. Pricing, reliability ratings, geopolitical risk factors. Okay. Over here, a little bit deeper. Now I'm just staying with ChatGPT because I like what it's giving me right now. As you're learning this and applying these things, I would definitely go to all of them and start to figure out which ones you like best. Okay. There are more sources here. Here. Correlate the data with financial reports, industry growth patterns. We're just collecting the data. What's the data? All right. Go through this thing, do its thing. Uh-oh, did we break it? Didn't take long. Okay, it didn't. So it's putting together the data and putting it all together here. And what I'm going to ask you to do, put this in a table. Stop it. Hey, this looks good. And you organize in a table that is easy to review. Here we go. That works there. We're going through that process. Oh, this was interesting. Northvolt, Charlotte, Chapter 11. So that would be a key insight right there. Another one would be here. Reducing reliance on Chinese suppliers, which we know is going to drive the cost up a little bit more. Okay. Assess and choose the GPT platform. We know we're trying with ChatGPT. We could work that out. If you wanted to integrate real-time data, if you had a consistent battery requirement every month, you might have API feeds or data feeds that would feed you that data on a regular basis so that you can update your table every single day and not get worn out. Then we would launch it, and then we go here to our launch, evaluate top suppliers. Going through, what it's doing is looking at suppliers based on a scoring model, based on cost, quality, and lead time. Yep. Looks good, but give me a table. There we go. That's a little bit better. A little bit easier to see, right? A little bit easier to see. And the question would be like, where's this information coming from? We'd want to ask that question. Right? Here it says sources. While it's thinking, give them more justification. Give us an idea. Good to go. Good to go. Go into a little bit deeper. Now it's telling us some decisions to do here. All right. Another table. I like tables. This is good. All right. Very good. Now I know how long, if I was responsible for researching this, I would definitely want to be digging into where is this information coming from, but how long would it take you to consolidate all this together, right? Says trade-offs, supplier selection, including total cost of ownership and risk-adjusted pricing models. Oh, it's going to be a heavy lift. Let's see what it does. This is Gartner level research, right? Where Gartner comes in and they do all this good stuff. Supplier selection, trade-offs. Okay. It's really giving you some good information to make a solid decision. A solid decision. Total cost of ownership analysis. Even though Catalyst, China, this is China, makes sense, but with a mandate to bring it back to the States or out of China, these other ones become viable, right? They may not be the best, but through regulation, you're being forced into a situation, but it's giving you options that you can do. Risk adjusted pricing model. Going through the process. South Korea, 2 vendors from South Korea. A U.S. ally, not a Chinese vendor, a little bit more expensive. However, what incentives will the government give us to do business with South Korea because they are an allied partner? Don't know. I'm just, throwing that out there. And when you look at the risk adjusted costs, they're well within an error, right? Margin of error, make a decision that way. Now let's put it all together. Final recommendation, strategic supplier selection, upfront cost, long-term reliability, balanced cost and risk, minimum geopolitical risk. Okay, let's put it all together. And it's putting it together for us. So as we're kind of coming to the end of this, start to think of some questions or even just some discussion topics you want to bring to this, and we can unmute and have a conversation about different challenges you're having. And don't forget, on Friday, we're going to have our office hours where you can actually, after trying this stuff out, bring that to the office hours and say, hey, this was great. It worked really, really well doing this, this, and this, or I had problems doing this, or I have questions. I've done all this great stuff, but now what do I need to do for this? And it may be a specific use case that you have for your organization that you want to bring into this conversation. And strategic actions like this: monitor geopolitical risks, optimize total cost, align with sustainability and compliance policies. All good stuff here. All right. We launched the prompt creation, we launched it, and then we execute a packaging for management. What this means is we take everything that we've done so far and we package it up nicely to where it's actually usable information that we can present to somebody to get a decision or to give them information so that they can be informed as a decision maker. So now we're going to generate the executive summary and walk through this process. We'll queue up the next one while we're here. And we did a whole analysis for concert speakers. Took less than an hour. Entire analysis. We went from sourcing, identification, pricing, an evaluation process, an RFP process, generated an RFP that we could send out. Again, I know it's not compliant with your RFP templates, but it can fill that in. If you were able to drop an RFP template right in there and say, I needed to meet this, it will do that in a matter of minutes to knock this stuff out. Okay. Supplier performance snapshot, key insights, cost advantages, stability and compliance, big plus there. Cost narrows the price gap. Okay. Procurement strategy recommendations. Again, depending upon what you need, right? Budget was an issue, lowest cost up front. It is what it is. Budget's not an issue, but value is. This is something we would look at. Final takeaways, action steps. And this would be good, but we've got our prompting process takes a little bit deeper. Cue this one up. All right. Now, this is when I see a table like this is something I could take to a finance person, somebody who understands data and really likes data, right? Some people are, they love green technology and they want it no matter what. But when you start to break down data like this, it starts to give some real meat to recommendations so that you're able to get key things done, right? Makes a lot of sense. And more. Yeah. Go a little bit deeper. Cue this one up. Now deliver a pause. There we go. That'll be the big one. So why did I have it do those 3 prompts before I do this final one? Because I'm having it think through these things and then creating a final report. What you'll learn as you go through and use these chat machines and these AI machines is they're very good at doing one thing. But if you have it try to do 10 things, it's going to fumble and flop and come up with what they call hallucinations. It's going to make stuff up. It's not going to work so well. However, if you have 10 bots that each one does one thing really, really well, then you consolidate those findings into a report or into a result. You're going to have a much better result than if you try to get one bot to do 10 things. So just keep that in mind as you're going through and building these out. So, based on this, we could build out an RFP generating bot that would have your templates and would be looking for specific information. And based on that information, you would build another bot that would do market research, right? And then you would build another bot that does supplier vetting and verification, where it would send emails out on your behalf and do those types of things. This mitigation, okay, this is looking good. Perfect. And then we package it all up nice and pretty. Let it run. It's going through. Now, the reason I use ChatGPT and I didn't bounce around is I like the results I was getting, and I didn't want to play with the other ones, And I've used them all, so I can tell pretty quickly which one is giving me the answers the way I like to see them. And then as I use the system more and more, it's better. It gets better and better every time I use it because it learns how I do business. It learns what I think and how I think, which is always good. Right. Very nice. Good recommendations, prioritize long-term value. Now, if I was a procurement analyst and I was presenting this report to my boss, this is a great summary, right? And, going back to prove it, right? You say this, but prove it. If anyone says, well, the AI says so, we want to grin and smile and say, I understand. However, did you ask the AI where it found its information? Did you validate the information it was giving you? And it's really simple, right? We just go in here and say, hey, great report. Please provide a list of sources for the information you provided. Yeah. Boom. Now it's going to go through and it's going to give me the actual sources. As you can see, it's giving me the actual links. Right. And this is a huge improvement from a year ago. McKinsey's a pretty reliable source. Reuters, CSIS. Okay. Make sure. And then you can go through that. And why we want, again, get in the habit of it to make sure that it's finding the right information. Okay. And I think we did this entire scale case study within 15 minutes, a whole lithium battery analysis to determine how we would move forward in this process. So by using the scale framework, it just gives us a framework, and you can apply that framework again to any business problem. So as it comes up, it's like, well, can AI help us with this? Grab this framework, plug it in, and work through it, and you'll be good to go. Okay. So with this, we're kind of coming to the end. What are your specific questions that you have about AI up to this point?